Have you ever felt a silence so loud it drowns out hope? A silence that seems to echo in the very core of your being, amplifying the ache of unmet desires and unfulfilled dreams. A silence that whispers doubts and fears, making you question whether your voice even matters. That was Hannah's world, muted by longing, her dreams unanswered. Each day was a heavy cloak of disappointment, a constant reminder of what she lacked. The joy of others felt like a sharp sting, and the future seemed like a barren landscape. But one day she prayed. Not a polished prayer, not a carefully constructed plea designed to impress, but a raw, soul-wrenching cry that shook heaven itself. A desperate outpouring of pain, frustration, and a flicker of unwavering faith that refused to be extinguished. It was a prayer born not of obligation, but of sheer unadulterated need. This wasn't just a story from the past. It's not just an ancient tale relegated to the dusty pages of history. It's a living testimony to the power of desperate honesty before God. A testament that transcends time and culture, reminding us that even in our darkest moments, our vulnerability can become our greatest strength. Hannah's prayer was a turning point, not just for her, not just a personal victory over her own struggles, but for a nation. It rippled outwards, impacting generations to come. From her anguish, a prophet was born, a leader, a guide, a voice of truth and justice. It all began with one woman, on her knees, humbled and broken, with nothing left but audacious faith. A faith that dared to believe even when all hope seemed lost. We're going to walk with Hannah, step into her world, feel her pain, witness her surrender, understand the depth of her despair, and listen in on the prayer that changed everything. The prayer that defied expectations and unlocked the miraculous. Why did God respond so powerfully? What was it about Hannah's plea that resonated so deeply with the divine? The answer isn't perfect words. It's not about crafting eloquent phrases or reciting memorized verses, but a perfectly surrendered heart. A heart laid bare before God, stripped of pretense and pride. If you've ever wondered if your prayers matter, or if you're tired of praying with no results, if you feel like your voice is lost in the noise, this story is for you. Hannah's journey is a roadmap. God isn't moved by eloquence, but by honesty. He sees beyond our carefully constructed facades and connects with the authentic cries of our hearts. Let's step into the temple with Hannah, leave behind our preconceived notions and discover the prayer that can change everything. The prayer that unlocks heaven's door and invites the miraculous into our lives. To grasp the power of Hannah's prayer, you must first feel the depth of her pain. Hannah was loved by her husband Elkanah, but she was barren, a source of public shame in her culture. Her rival, Peninnah, had children and tormented Hannah daily, turning home into a battleground of grief. Even Elkanah's love couldn't fill the void or understand her agony. Isolated and overlooked, Hannah's heart was a storm of longing and disappointment. From this place of brokenness, she would finally make her way to the temple, where something had to break. The annual pilgrimage to Shiloh was supposed to be a joyous celebration, a time of community and spiritual renewal. Families would travel from afar, their hearts filled with hope and anticipation. The air would be thick with the scent of incense and the sounds of singing and laughter. But for Hannah, this year, like so many before, the pilgrimage was a source of deep agony, a stark reminder of her own personal sorrow. This year, the pain was not just present. It was unbearable, a crushing weight that threatened to suffocate her spirit. The festive atmosphere only amplified her feelings of inadequacy and despair. After the family meal, surrounded by the boisterous joy of others, she could no longer bear the pretense. She quietly rose and left the noise and merriment behind, seeking solace in solitude. Driven by desperation, she made her way to the temple entrance and collapsed, both physically and emotionally, at the threshold of the sacred space. This wasn't a polite, carefully constructed prayer. It was a raw, unfiltered outpouring of her soul, a total surrender to the divine. Every fiber of her being was focused on this desperate plea. Tears streaming down her face, a torrent of grief and longing washing over her. Sobs racking her body, each one a testament to the depth of her pain and the intensity of her yearning. She was completely vulnerable, stripped bare before God. She didn't care who saw her in this state of utter brokenness. The opinions of others were irrelevant in the face of her profound need. Years of shame, Disappointment and unfulfilled longing poured out of her like a dam had burst, releasing a flood of pent-up emotion. The high priest Eli, observing from a distance, saw her lips moving but heard no sound. He completely misunderstood her silent, desperate prayer, misinterpreting the intensity of her emotion as a sign of intoxication. He approached her, accusing her of being drunk and disrupting the sanctity of the temple. Even in her lowest moment, facing unjust accusation and profound personal sorrow, Hannah stood firm, refusing to be defined by the priest's misjudgment. With unwavering conviction she replied, "No, my lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord." She didn't become defensive or lash out in anger. She maintained her composure, even in the face of unwarranted criticism. She simply and truthfully explained the depth of her pain and the sincerity of her prayer. In that moment, Hannah was no longer defined by her barrenness or her societal expectations. She refused to be limited by her pain or the judgment of her critics. She was there for one singular, unwavering reason: to have an audience with the King of Heaven, to lay her deepest desires and vulnerabilities before the Almighty. Not even a mistaken priest wielding his authority could stand in her way or diminish the power of her prayer. Her surrender was complete, a total abandonment of her own will in favor of God's. She had nothing left to lose, except her silence, the silence that had kept her bound in pain for so long. This was the pivotal moment, the turning point where everything began to shift and change in her life. Sometimes breakthrough starts not with grand gestures or miraculous events, but with a simple act of vulnerability. It begins when you stop caring who's watching, judging, or misunderstanding your pain, and instead pour out your soul, unfiltered and unreserved, to the only one who can truly understand. What did Hannah's prayer look like? What was the posture of her heart as she approached the divine? The Bible says she spoke in her heart. It was a conversation held deep within her soul. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. It was a silent plea, a desperate whisper carried on the wings of faith. This was not for show. It wasn't a performance for the benefit of onlookers. It was a private, honest transaction with God, a vulnerable moment shared only between a woman and her Creator. She poured out her soul, holding nothing back. Every fear, every doubt, every unspoken desire laid bare before the Almighty. Her pain, her longing, the ache of barrenness that haunted her days. Her anger, the frustration of unanswered prayers, her hope, the flickering ember of belief that a miracle was still possible. God isn't offended by our raw emotions. He invites them. He wants us to come to Him as we are, with all our imperfections and vulnerabilities. Hannah's prayer was specific. It wasn't a vague request for blessings. "O Lord, if you will give me a son, I will give him to you all his life." A clear and unwavering commitment. She didn't just ask for relief. She made a vow, a sacred promise binding her to a higher purpose, surrendering her deepest desire to God's purpose, recognizing that His will was greater than her own. This wasn't a bargain, but an act of trust, a profound expression of faith in God's sovereignty. My miracle will become your vessel. The child she longed for would be dedicated to God's service. She aligned her longing with God's plan. Her personal desires were now intertwined with a divine calling. That combination, the potent blend of honesty, the unfiltered truth of her heart laid bare before God, specificity, a clear and defined request, leaving no room for ambiguity, and surrender, the willingness to relinquish control and trust in God's perfect timing and plan, created a prayer heaven couldn't ignore, a prayer that resonated with divine purpose. Her silent cry was more powerful than any shout. It was a testament to the strength of faith and the power of a humble heart. It was a prayer that changed her life and history, a single act of faith that rippled through generations. Sometimes the prayers that move heaven are the ones no one else hears, the quiet whispers of a desperate soul reaching out to a loving God. When Eli realized Hannah's heart, he blessed her. "Go in peace and may God grant your request." Hannah left, ate, and her face was no longer sad. Her circumstances hadn't changed, but her spirit had. Soon after, God answered her prayer. Why did her prayer work so powerfully? 3 keys. First, brutal honesty. She poured out her soul, not hiding her pain. Second, specificity. She asked for a son, not just a vague blessing. Third, surrender. She vowed to give her miracle back to God. Honesty creates intimacy with God. Specific prayers build focused faith. Surrender turns your request into worship. When your miracle becomes a tool for God's purpose, breakthrough follows. Hannah's prayer wasn't just about her, it was about God's glory. That's the kind of prayer that unlocks miracles. Hannah's story resonates because we've all felt overlooked watching others receive what we long for. Her emptiness was a barren womb. Yours might be an empty bank account, a lonely home, or a lost dream. The waiting is exhausting, hope rising and falling year after year. If you feel invisible or forgotten, take heart. Hannah's story is your story. The moment you feel most forgotten may be the moment closest to your breakthrough. God did not forget Hannah, and He has not forgotten you. We often focus on what we pray, lists, verses, formulas, but Hannah's story teaches it's not the words, but the heart behind them. God listens for authenticity, not eloquence. Hannah's messy, desperate cry moved God, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. You don't need a formula, you need honesty. Pour out your heart. Anger, disappointment, confusion. God can handle it. Vulnerability forges intimacy with God. Stop worrying about perfect words. Focus on realness. Your honest prayer is a sweet sound to God. That's the kind of prayer that gets heaven's attention. Like Hannah, your realness can change everything. How do you pray like Hannah? Here are 4 steps. First, find your place of surrender, a quiet space where you can be vulnerable with God. Second, pour out your heart without editing. Don't hold back. Your tears and sighs are prayers too. Third, dare to make a vow. Align your request with God's purpose. How can your answered prayer bring Him glory? Fourth, leave your burden and walk in faith. After praying, choose to believe God has heard you. Don't pick the burden back up. Make your space a temple floor, a sacred meeting place. Be brutally honest. Empty your heart before God. Let your request be specific and your surrender real. Make your prayer a partnership with God. When doubt creeps in, remind yourself, I've given this to God. Walk away with peace and expectation. Your answer may already be on its way. Hannah's steps are simple but powerful. Start today. Pray with honesty, surrender, and faith. We've walked with Hannah through pain to breakthrough. Her story is an invitation. Leave behind surface prayers and enter honest conversation with God. He's not looking for perfection. He wants your real heart. God sees your hidden heartbreak and hears your silent cries. He's waiting for you to pour out your soul just as Hannah did. Your breakthrough isn't about a formula, but about vulnerability. Find your temple floor, pour out your heart, make a vow, and walk away in faith. God is ready to answer. Your story isn't over. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Your support means a lot to us.